Well, hello. My name is John Bonner. I'm a missionary, a pastor, and the director of Calvary Chapel Bible College in Cajamarca, Peru, in South America. I am honored that you would listen to my unique testimony, and I pray that it would be a blessing and an encouragement to you. Chapter 5. Reckless Abandon. Come, let us go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. 1 Samuel 14:6. Jonathan's words to his armor bearer. Evening time, 1983. Los Angeles International Airport, Los Angeles, California. The wheels lifted off the ground as the jet hurled down the runway at Los Angeles International Airport. Peering out the plane's little window at LAX's famous theme building, control tower, and the iconic nighttime skyline of Los Angeles, the horizon now gave way to the pitch darkness of the Pacific Ocean below. I knew there was no turning back. I was on my way to Central America with only 41 cents in my pocket. Oh, the blessedness of possessing nothing and the thrill of being entirely dependent on God. The Lord had been dealing with me concerning money. I seriously put too much time and consideration toward it. Even as a small boy, almost nightly I would open my piggy bank and neatly stack the quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies I had collected. My $10 collection grew to $100. I saved until that $100 grew to $1,000. I loved money. I was a true Ebenezer Scrooge protege. I was proud of my accumulation of green, and then I began attending Calvary Chapel. I kept hearing Bible verses like, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil," and "No one can serve two masters." In my heart, I sensed that God was warning me about the subtle deceitfulness of riches and wealth. I read in the Bible about a conversation that Jesus had with a wealthy young ruler who wanted to know what he had to do to inherit eternal life. Jesus told him to sell all that he had and to give it to the poor, and then follow him. The rich young man went away sad because he could not give up his possessions to follow Jesus. I realized that I was that rich young man. I realized that I did not own wealth, but that my wealth owned me. God had to root this lust for wealth and possessions out of my life, and He did. He took the craving for money away. I did just what Jesus told the rich young ruler to do. I sold what I had, and I gave it away and sensed immense joy. Oh, the blessedness of owning nothing. In the summer of 1983, I was invited to travel to Costa Rica to participate in an exciting joint evangelistic outreach with Maranatha Music Español and Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa. After a month of follow-up counseling for a series of concerts featuring Alejandro Alonso and Antonio Lozano, I was to remain another 4 months to disciple the new believers and participate in the planting of a new church in the capital city of San Jose. My airfare and room and board were to be taken care of the entire time. I had $20 cash to take as spending money. I arrived at Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa just prior to departure and was told by the missions coordinator, Oscar Oxford, that the Costa Rica trip had been postponed a week and to come back then. I did not know what to do. I only had $20 in my pocket for food and did not have a place to stay. Yet I saw God provide in such miraculous ways those 7 days and watched Him stretch that $20 until I boarded the plane. With permission, I slept in a car each night in the church parking lot. Burger King had a $1 special on Whopper cheeseburgers that week, and I discovered some great deals from the damaged goods rack at the local supermarkets. At that time, Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa owned an avocado orchard in Santa Paula, and they brought in barrels full of delicious, ripe fruit for the taking that became my free daily meal. As God provided for Elijah, He was providing for me. I even had money left over. Oh, the joy I felt when the plane began to taxi and I placed my hand on the 41 cents in my pocket. 1 quarter, 1 dime, 1 nickel, and 1 penny. I laughed with glee. It was wonderful to know that God is my provider and we can trust His promises to meet our needs. When I arrived to Costa Rica, a letter was waiting for me from Mrs. Larson, an elderly widow from Acacia. She had slipped in a $5 bill along with an encouraging note. Soon, another envelope arrived with a $20 bill from another family. God is faithful. I now had plenty to get by on for the next 5 months. One of my most cherished Bible studies is when Jonathan encourages his armor bearer to trust the Lord with many or with few. Alone, the two of them ascended the hill and attacked and killed 20 Philistine soldiers. When the enemy army realized what had happened, God confused and scattered them. Meanwhile, Jonathan's father, King Saul, with his 600 soldiers, had no idea what was going on. Pastor Chuck Smith called this type of faith reckless abandon. This is the life God has called me to live, trusting Him to provide my every need, even when I could easily call on others to help. Jonathan relied only on God's resources, not his father the king. I believe this can be called a special gift of faith, a supernatural ability God gives to certain people, to those who are willing to wait on His promises, to trust Him in big ways. In ministry, a leader must be aware of God's guidance and provision as confirmation of His leading. If He does not provide, then He is not leading. Closed door? Pursue it no more. There are risks involved with ministry too. Sometimes we must trust God and take steps of faith, but it should always be bathed in prayer and watching for God's leading and confirmation along the way. Check your heart to make sure you have no personal motivation nor hidden agenda. The Lord also allowed me to translate for a group of doctors in Honduras at the invitation of David Corson and CERT, the Christian Emergency Relief Team. They sent me the dates, but they had already arrived and were setting up the medical outreach to the Mosquito Indians desperately needing medical attention in the mountain highlands. From my home in Mexico City, I flew to the capital of Tegucigalpa and somehow found a bus heading to the remote Mosquito Indian village where the medical team was already hard at work. After buying my ticket, I discovered my seat was on top of the bus, only women and children inside. A gunny sack filled with grain became my seat, and my traveling companions were a variety of animals, dogs, chickens, and a goat tied up to the side rails. It was a fascinating trip ascending the curvy mountain roads of Central America, on top of a bus, alone, in a country I had never been to. Reckless? Yes, indeed. After just a few days translating in the village, the doctors taught me how to do a formal medical history, diagnose certain illnesses, work with a stethoscope to monitor heart rate and blood pressure, and even to give injections. My thoughts went back to my former co-workers at the telephone company and other friends working as cogs in a wheel in a 9-to-5 job back home. In helping others, my life had purpose. Worship arose from my soul as I thanked the Lord for allowing me this meaningful adventure. It delights God when we trust Him and walk by faith. He longs to be our provider and sustainer. In the same way, He is the author of salvation. He is our provision for eternal life. The myth of coincidence. Are you willing to wholeheartedly trust God in every area of your life? Abraham lived a life of reckless abandon. Obediently, he left Ur and set off for the land of promise. The interesting thing, though, according to the book of Hebrews, was that he went out not knowing where he was going. He just packed up his belongings and started walking, trusting the Lord to direct his steps. I believe Abraham to be the first missionary, leaving his family and father's house and going to the land that God was to show him. Genesis 12:1. I believe missionaries must develop this trust and full confidence in God that Abraham epitomized. Can you describe a circumstance in your life where you were totally dependent on God in which He led you to a greater level of trust?